All right, all guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 brought to us by the official beer of the program, Johnny Cuba. European roots with that Caribbean soul, a refreshing German lager in a can. Pick up a six-pack yourself. We got major tournament action tonight. Pick up a six-pack for yourself, your local Sedanos, Presidente, Winn-Dixie, Fresco y Mas. Always drink responsibly. And, of course, don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. Joining us now, let's get into the tournament here. SEC Network, ESPN Radio, Sirius XM every morning. Peter Burns, also best week ever, of course, every Sunday, where you've heard me with him before. Peter, how you doing today? Thanks for hanging out with us.
I need some of the Johnny Cuba beer. I need some of that. The storylines that we've had here around the SEC has just been nuts. We were just talking about on our Sirius XM show between, Alabama being always such a football school, and then the job that Nate Oates has done, and then they'll face damn UConn, who is just unbelievable so far in what they've done. Zaz, in this run, it's been nothing short of fantastic. And then Tennessee running into Zach Edey and all 8'4" just Terminator that he was for Purdue. That's been a hell of a storyline. We got LSU and Iowa coming up tonight, and I would have never thought this in my life, but I spent more time breaking down women's hoops today than I did even the men's Final Four stuff, because this whole Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Kim Mulkey, Flau'jae Johnson storyline is incredible to me. Even women's hoops as a whole. So it's been a hell of a weekend, my man, to say the least.
Yeah. So let's start with the men's side here, and then we'll get to what I think feels like the main event, which is tonight, Iowa and LSU. Even though we got two women's games tonight, but let's start with Purdue. Zach Edey in particular. I don't think he's an NBA player. Do you believe he's an NBA player? And it's interesting because 20 years ago, he's a top 3 pick in the draft. And when I say I don't think he's an NBA player, he'll be drafted. He's a second-round guy probably, but I don't think he's an NBA starter, I guess is what I'm saying. What do you think?
Yeah, because the game has changed, right? Is the idea of going back of David Robinson and back against the basket type bigs, and even, Shaq played a little bit of that way as well too. And that's kind of honestly what it reminded me of last night is whenever I'm watching Tennessee, is just they couldn't, every time that Edey would repost, they just couldn't deal with him. And then by the time that he would repost so close to the basket, Zaz, all he had to do was just reach up and just drop the ball in the bucket, in the basket. And they had that success. So, yeah, it's kind of like old school Ewing and Olajuwon. And then the game has just changed. Bigs need to be able to spread the floor. And Edey's not a guy that's going to be a Dirk Nowitzki or a 7-footer or a Kevin Durant that can stretch it that way. However, I was impressed. He'll probably go maybe late, early second round, because you can't teach height, and to be 7'4" and just change the trajectory of shots. And that's what killed Tennessee in that game. It's not just, how good Edey was at, get offensively. It was that Tennessee was scared, frankly, to get into the paint whatsoever because Edey was such a shot blocker. You look at what Victor Wembanyama is doing with the Spurs. Once they get a team around him, you're like, that guy is a game changer because of his wingspan. And I don't think you can kind of teach that wingspan. But then again, I'm not sure if the NBA plays a whole hell of a lot of defense or they care about that anymore. So he's a perfect example of a guy that can play really good college basketball, but I'm not quite sure how well it looks over to the NBA. And I think the best part that the NFL has done, and why the NFL continues to remain king and get bigger and better, is that the game on Sundays has morphed and looked a lot more like the game on Saturdays, in which these stars are built. And so Jalen Hurts, when he goes plays for the Eagles, he could play the same style of football that he had at Oklahoma and Alabama, rather than, now he's got to change to an NFL caliber type quarterback mantra or profile, and it didn't fit to his game. So it's tough to deal with Edey, man. That was the first time that I've really dialed in and watched him play, and he never got tired either. He maybe at the end where he missed one or two of those free throws late, but for a big like that to play 38 and a half minutes of just physical basketball and still dominate was awesome to watch.
Can you explain how crazy this run that NC State is on right now? They were a 14-loss team. They had no chance of making the tournament if they didn't win the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
They win the ACC tournament, 5 games in 5 days. It's now 9 wins in a row. And in the second half yesterday, I mean, they kicked the shit out of Duke.
Yeah, and it's a fear, and it's the lack of fear, I would say, right? And it kind of starts with DJ Burns and just kind of his playfulness and how he's enjoying this run. But there's no longer it feels like when you go to Vegas and the last night you're in Vegas, you're up, X amount of dollars. You're like, dude, we're literally playing with house money now. Like, let's just go out. And then all of a sudden you win more and you're like, okay, I'm just not going to lose. And there's no pressure. And you go back and look that they were a bank shot away, I think, against Virginia in the first round of the ACC tournament. They lose that game, maybe at second round, and then they're done. They're not even in the tournament because they were the 10th ranked ACC squad. So, and it's fitting that it's North Carolina State, because you go back to 1983, it was Jim Valvano. They went on this run that was they were a little bit better than this current NC State team, but he's the one, Zaz, that coined the phrase "survive and advance." Like, that's what we talk about it in our phrases when it comes to sports, especially March Madness. But Valvano was the one who said before the '83 ACC tournament, guys, we just need to survive and advance every single game, and that's what the Wolfpack have done. And how sweet is it that not only do you beat that North Carolina's out, but you beat Duke for the ACC championship to go to the tournament, and then you end them an opportunity to go to the Final Four. Like, that is such sweet. It's just, I wouldn't say karma, but man, Wolfpack fans got to be freaking fired up for that.
Peter, is what UConn has been doing, and we're talking 10 straight wins, all of them by double figures. The closest any team has been the 13 that the Miami Hurricanes lost to them in the Final Four last year. They decide, hey, the game's tied. Okay, let's score the next 30 points, and then there's nothing to do in the second half. Is what UConn is doing right now a good thing? Like, we talk about, there being a dominant team, dynasties. Is that good for sports? Is what UConn doing right now, is this a good thing?
Yeah, I think it's great, because I think I need to know who we're chasing, especially when there's so many storylines, I feel, in a weird way, in the women's side of it. Like, there's so many players, and these storylines that on the men's side, because of more one and done and because of the transfer portal, we don't see a lot of those storylines develop. So what I need in the storyline is, hey, who is everybody chasing? Who is that dominant team? Yes, I do like parity. There's been a lot of parity as far as the regular season of college hoops, but who is not the villain, but who's that team? And rarely do we ever see a team. I mean, the last time to do it was 07, 08 Florida, to go back to back and win a national championship. But like, at some point, I need to know, if I don't know a player, I need to know a storyline. And the storyline is now that UConn is incredible. I mean, they've had a 30-point lead in every single one of their tournament games so far. It's out of control. But if there was a team that poses an issue, Alabama, because Alabama is one of those teams that they'll shoot it from inside the gym. They don't care. And they don't care if they miss, because guess what? As soon as they miss, they're going to get an opportunity to shoot another shot. And that's the mentality that Nate Oates has. And I think that's what you need, is you're going to have a team that makes 13 3-pointers and goes unconscious, kind of like Jack Golke did for Oakland against Kentucky earlier in the thing, where it's like, hey, dude, I'm like, give me the Jordan shrug. Like, I can't believe we're doing this. And I don't think Alabama's afraid, because Nate Oates doesn't coach them that way. Nate Oates wants them to just be absolute mad dogs. And so this little Dan Hurley versus Nate Oates coaching matchup is going to be fascinating. Two fiery coaches and two teams that are going to be should be fun to watch. I can see UConn winning by 25, but I can also see Alabama winning that game on a buzzer beater by Mark Sears. Like, that's why I'll be tuned into it.
Have you ever been to the Final Four?
Yeah, a couple times. I lived in San Antonio when we would have it, and it's such a unique experience, top to bottom, of having so many people and these fan bases and all this excitement. It's not unlike when I go to the College World Series every year in Omaha, and you got 8 fan bases that are like there, and you're partying for a day or two and you cannot wait. And then as you're leaving, somebody's trying to sell their tickets because they're just despondent because what a run it was. So I love it. It's a fantastic event every year.
Which is better? Like, if you have the choice to go Saturday night and go to both games or go to the national championship on Monday, which is better?
I think I mean, obviously, let's say if you're just saying it's a bucket list thing and you don't have your team plan, it's a great question. I'm going to go Saturday because you get to see four unique fan bases and them, and then you get all day of basketball. And again, I think I love the Elite Eight games because there's something so big to being able to say you went to the Final Four. Okay. Like I'll never forget when the Broncos lost to the Ravens back in 2012. That was the Raheem Morris. He ends up whiffing, and Joe Flacco throws a pass over the Broncos secondary's head, and they go and they win. Ultimately, will go on as a wild card to win the national or win the Super Bowl. But I remember being gutted, not because that was the Super Bowl. It was because what could have potentially happened.
Yeah.
Right. Like the thoughts of, oh man, we definitely would have won had we got there. But the fact that you didn't even get to that game is absolutely
It's so interesting that you say that because I've made that point several times. Like the Miami Heat, for instance. The Heat have been in the finals twice in the last 5 years. They've lost them both. The Florida Panthers this past year were in the Stanley Cup final and they lost. But when you lose in the championship round, it doesn't hurt me nearly as much as a fan as it does losing before getting there. You want the chance. And it's like, once we get to the championship round, all right, we did it. We're here. If we win, great. If we didn't, it's because the other team was better. Losing in the championship round for me is never as devastating as losing, say, in the conference round.
It's the what if. And it's the, well, we would have, because clearly you're like, we would have done this. And look at this matchup. And even when watching, like to watch somebody else play for a game in which you think you should have been able to play or you would desperately hope, I'm with you. And it's a rare thing. That's why like in this women's hoops game, LSU versus Iowa is so fascinating to me because then it's for who has an opportunity to go to that Final Four. Because, in a lot of sports, there's certain tier levels of success. And in college hoops, it's did you make the tournament? Did you make the Sweet 16? Did you make a Final Four? Or did you cut down the nets? Like, and where your program is at, depending on is what is acceptable right now. And so, to not have Kim Mulkey, Angel Reese, and Flau'jae Johnson be in the Final Four, people would have thoughts on that. And to not have Caitlin Clark, arguably the biggest star athlete in basketball right now, as far as college hoops, not be in the Final Four would be kind of crazy as well. I mean, it's the storylines are crazy on that side of the bracket.
So I think you made the case on Best Week Ever yesterday, Sunday mornings on ESPN Radio, 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern, that you think LSU should be considered America's team. I want you to explain a little bit of that because I'll tell you the reason that pushing Kim Mulkey to the side because she's extremely difficult for me to root for. But the reason that I like LSU as a team is it's a bunker mentality. It's them against everybody else. And while I love basketball, the thing that I dislike so much about the direction the NBA has been headed in really the last 10, 15 years, everyone's hugging and kissing before the game, after the game. Everybody is best friends. They all love each other. I come from the 90s, Pat Riley, Heat, Knicks. I hate that team on the other side.
Give me Jordan and Bird, or Bird and Magic, and they hated each other. That literally, it's like if I cross paths with you in an off season, buddy, look the other way because we're competing 365 days a year, and I like that. And I mean, Angel Reese talked about that. She goes, listen, like I respect Caitlin Clark. When it comes to being on the court, we're not friends. And like, how often do you see that anymore? I do miss that. And so I think there's a little bit. Now, the reason why I said it, a lot of people got pissed off about it. They're like, how is it America's team? Like, you got Kim Mulkey, who's not likable. You have, you got Angel Reese doing the "you can't see me" ring thing to Caitlin Clark. And I go, think about it bigger picture, right? You've got a coach that probably leans one way politically. with players that probably lean the other way politically. I'm going to take a guess. They probably don't listen to the same music. They probably have different fashion sense. They probably consume their media differently. Everything about Kim Mulkey, her coaching staff, and her players are probably pretty polar opposites in many facets of life. And we live in a very polarizing moment right now in the real world where everybody's like, I'm on this side and this is the only people I hang out with, or I'm on this side and the only people I hang out with, and we don't cross-pollinate, right? And yet I said they're America's team because that's who they are. And when they get on the court, they don't matter. It doesn't matter what you listen to or do you have a TikTok or who you voted for, or what your beliefs are, okay? It is, are we here as a team? Do we all get together and are we all saying we're here for a job and our job is to try to win a national championship? And do they do it? Yeah. And I was like, I appreciate that, right? Like I appreciate the fact because I think we live in such a polarized topic now where it's like, well, I can't get along with that person and I'm not going to, be on that person's side because of this and that. Like Angel Reese is arguably one of the biggest stars in hoops. Okay. She's a millionaire with her NIL deal. Kim Mulkey, and she's a star. And Kim Mulkey went to her at some point early in the season and benched her. You're not playing well. You're not locked in. In the transfer portal world that we live into, Zaz, now, people will be like, the hell, do you know who the hell I am? Like, we won a national championship last year. I'm the reason why. And all of this. And Angel Reese says, great thing to happen. I'm like, dude, that's legit. Like that is exactly how I want players to be coached. I want coaches to coach their players that way in a throwback mentality. And I think that's why it's a unique take on who really is America's team right now. And I kind of like LSU and their swagger.
Peter, has there been anything better that has come out as a result of this Kim Mulkey story from the Washington Post, which, by the way, I only got halfway through. I fell asleep while reading it. Has there been anything better than from that story coming out than the highlights of Louisiana Tech 40 years ago, Kim Mulkey, point guard, 5'4", running up and down that floor and them winning games? I mean, how great are those clips?
Bulldog. I mean, that's and honestly, that's who she was, and that's who she still is. And I mean, I read the entire Washington Post thing, which was interesting. Is I didn't really learn a whole hell of a lot that I didn't already think about Kim Mulkey. Is she fiery? Yes. Did she have a rough upbringing? I learned a little bit more about that. But will she hold a grudge? Yeah. And is she a person, though, when you're in her inner circle, she's going to move worlds for you no matter what it is? Yeah. And I mean, I think that's kind of what we saw. Now the only thing I don't know is that did that piece change? Because Kim Mulkey's like, I'm hiring lawyers and you better vet every single one of these stories. I don't know. All I know is that it was a profile and she got out in front of it, and ultimately it turned into a nothing situation. And then that was the only person she beefed with. She beefed with the people at the Los Angeles Times for kind of it was just a low-hanging fruit article talking about, the milk and cookie girls versus the hot sauce girls and, the dirty debutantes. And I understand what they were trying to do there. I mean, it was a columnist that was promoting UCLA women's hoops versus who LSU was. But again, it's funny because it goes to show you how LSU embraces the villain role. They almost thrive upon it. I mean, Angel Reese posted a picture after they beat UCLA. That was a picture of milk and cookies along with some hot sauce. And it was just, hey, man, it ain't the end of the world. We're making it a big deal. Did the girls on the team care about it? Not really. They played basketball. They won the game, and now it sets up an interesting storyline. I was thinking about this today, and I'll ask you because you've been around it a lot. Mm-hmm. I can't wait for this game coming up. LSU and Iowa. Caitlin Clark, LSU, Kim Mulkey, the whole deal. When was the last time that you circled a college basketball game that you didn't really have a vested interest in going, clear the schedule, I need to know I need to watch this game, or at least I can't wait to see how this thing plays out? Was there a lot of them?
No. Certainly never for the women's game. Never. This will be the first time ever for the women's game. And a little bit that has to do with, I've evolved as an adult, as a male who's been watching sports his whole life.
I never watched it growing up. I mean, right. I didn't.
Right. So definitely first time ever for the women. And for the men, I mean, obviously I was dialed in last year with the Hurricanes, first time ever going to the Final Four. But otherwise, it's been a long time.
I've had more people reach out to me today that have no interest in women's hoops,
Right.
that don't really follow LSU or Iowa, that have mentioned something about this game. And that to me is crazy. And also another reason why a little controversy or perceived controversy ain't the worst thing in the world, right? I mean, it is, hey, we might get you in, and I don't think any of this is perceived, like or manufactured on purpose to like a WWE promo to try to make it happen. I think it happened organically. I think that's the reason why it's so unique. Like, this is not two boxers that are at a weigh-in that start some fake fight so that way you buy the pay-per-view.
Pay-per-view buys, sure, yeah.
No, this feels like there's a legitimate dislike once they get on the court between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. I want to see the antics. I want to see Caitlin Clark go for 40. I want to see them barking and talking trash. Like, I want to see it. I don't think that's wrong, because we talk about it on the men's side of it. Like, oh man, we love this. Look at these guys jawing at each other. Why the hell can't it be for women like that? And Caitlin Clark has said that. Like, everybody got up in their feelings last year when Angel Reese did the championship ring and stuff. And I think it had gotten a little bit. She went a little bit too far with it. But at the same point, everybody said, "Oh, I can't believe she did that." Caitlin Clark's like, trash. Good. I'm interested now. I think the number. I mean, I'd be surprised if it does anything less than probably 8 million people, which is control, which will be more than LSU Alabama football did last year. Which is nuts.
Yep, pretty wild. Yeah, I'm excited for it tonight. Peter, excellent job. Tell everybody how they can catch you every morning on SiriusXM.
Yeah, it's on channel 374, the SiriusXM app. Always, I mean, the easiest way to see my idiotic takes is over on Instagram or over on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN. So you can follow me there, or when Zaz is carrying me when we do our radio shows together on ESPN. So
thanks for hanging out today, Peter. I appreciate it. Enjoy the games tonight, man.
See you, bud.